Thank you everyone for joining. So what we're going to cover off today is a look through workflows, talking through best practice and talking through some areas that will hopefully enable you to embed this within your organizations. What we've done in the Zoom webinar today, we have the Q&A tool open and we also have the chat function open as well. So to kick things off today, before we launch into the workshop, what I'd like everybody to do is go into the chat option. You should be able to see that in the Zoom. Go into the chat, and I'd like everyone just to put in the chat in the Zoom webinar, what you currently use workflows for, just a general overview of what you use workflows for, or what you're going to intend to use workflows for. If you've got any ideas for how you want to expand your current use of our automation, or what you're currently using it for as well, just so we can get a flavor for everyone's priorities and we can start to see where people's focus is. So if you open up the chat and just pop a couple of things in there about what you're using it for. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got automating basic admin jobs from our operations team. Thank you, Elliot. Claire said confirmation of bookings, reminder emails. Barry, similar primarily for email notifications to clients. Very similar, yeah. Booking emails, reminders, delegate list to tutors, certificates. And is there anything people are looking to do or looking to expand with workflows? Another way of thinking is there anything you're currently doing manually that you would love workflows to be able to do? Elliot, comms emails, brilliant. Lovely stuff. Okay, thank you very much for that. So lots of standard confirmation emails, emails to delegates, and also reminders and certificates as well. So brilliant. What we're going to cover off today, hopefully we'll cover lots of different areas that will give you some food for thought, I suppose is the right term for that, about how you can expand the use of the automation of the platform and really kind of create that holistic platform. So what we're going to cover off today, just a bit of an agenda. Don't worry, it won't be death by PowerPoint in this. So what we're going to cover off today is the module selection. When you're creating a new workflow, choosing the right module, what modules are available. We'll also take a look at the workflow settings as well. So those rules that you create once you've chosen the module, adding the right rules and just some nuances and best practice around that maybe you've not thought of before, but just best practice tips that we've seen from working with lots of other clients. Next, we'll talk around sending emails and creating tasks with workflows. And then finally, we'll take a look at one of our newer functions that we've created in the platform, which is our cloning workflows functionality. So, like I said, any questions, do feel free to pop them in the Q&A or do feel free to use the chat function. But what I'll do is I'll flick into the platform now and we'll start to take a look at workflows with regards to module selection. So workflows can be found right at the top right of the platform in administration. And then towards the bottom, as I'm sure you all know, we have our workflow template section. Yeah, good point there, Sharon. This recording will be shared afterwards as well. So we're hoping to share this recording afterwards. Previously, our feature forums we ran as open meetings. As we're doing this as a webinar, we should be able to share this with everybody afterwards as well. Okay, so in our workflow section here, one best practice tip to start off with is just have a filter available. Quite often we see customers with lots of workflows, some of them active, some of them not active. It's always handy to have a filter just to show your active workflows so you can see which ones are currently set up and running. If you end up with lots of different workflows, which hopefully you do, and the automation is really kicking in around the platform, you can add a description to the workflows just so you know which one's which. Again, it just makes it clearer on the home page so you can see exactly what workflow is doing what. What we'll do in this example is we'll go through and we'll create a brand new workflow. Okay, so the very first page of this, we obviously give the workflow a name. Now, naming convention can be really important. If you've got a set of workflows, if your organization, for example, is multi-provider, there's different training providers in there, having the name of the training provider first, if it's the workflows are broken up per provider, it's really handy to have that naming convention across all your workflows. It's definitely worth spending a bit of time doing that. So perhaps one workflow is designed to create tasks. So one might be the task list workflow, and then it might be specific for certain types of courses. So these might be our first aid at work courses. Again, just makes it a bit easier. Sometimes people keep them quite generic, and then on that homepage for workflows, it can be quite confusing to see which workflow should be doing what. So again, I'd recommend having a think about your naming convention for workflows, and it just makes that whole section very orderly and a lot easier to read. So just give this one a quick title there for new workflow. Now, when I open up my modules here, we've got lots and lots of different options for different modules that we can use workflows for. So what this is telling us actually is that the workflows can be used throughout the platform. So there's lots of different use cases for workflows in here. So if we just have a look at some of these, I suppose the most popular ones. So the first one obviously here is the booking. So a booking workflow, that's when a shopping basket or a checkout has been completed, and that sends to the booker. Now, typically that's used for like very quick confirmation. Here's your order summary, and it's not got as much detail about the course. That's because it's going to the booker. Best use case for this is people who are booking multiple courses. So if you're booking 5 or 6 courses, you don't want to receive all of those information. If you're the booker, you've booked on 5 members of staff to those courses, you just want that high level overview. So that's what the booking one's used for. The next one we have is our class course and class delegate option. Now, this is quite a common thing to see with clients' workflows, is that being able to choose the right module will then unlock the ability to send the right information. Now, what I mean by that is if we choose course or just delegates, for example, that delegate workflow is then shared between classroom-based, webinar-based, e-learning based, and knowledge documents. So it applies to all 4 eventualities, which quite often is fine. However, if you want to send things that are specific to a class delegate or a web delegate, then you won't be able to find the right merge fields within those modules. So the best use case for this, if you've got a web-based course and you want to send the delegate the webinar details for that course, if you choose the standard delegate module, the web delegate details merge field in the email templates doesn't apply to class or e-learning, so therefore it won't be available. And vice versa for class delegates. If you want to send out the map URL for the venue address, the venue details, you need to be looking at the classroom-based course. So class delegates rather than standard delegates or web delegates at the bottom here. So choosing the right modules is really important. And if anyone's been building workflows previously, you'll know the email templates, when you create that, needs to match this module. So when you go ahead and create the email template later, it has to match this module exactly, otherwise the merge fields won't pull through. So really important to choose those modules right at the start. Good question, Tracy. Can you change the module later? You can't, unfortunately. Once the workflow's been created, it's then locked into that module. So yeah, question there from Claire as well. Once it's been created, it's locked in. So the best way to make sure you're choosing the right module is think about the output of the workflow. The majority of workflows are going to send emails. So it might be worth taking a look first in the email templates. Create the email template, make sure you can get all the content through that you want to send out to that delegate, the venue details, the webinar joining details, if it's e-learning, make sure the e-learning link's there, and then you'll be able to put it through in the right one in the workflow. Good question there from Tracy. How do you know what fields are available in the module list? That's where the email template comes in handy. You can see which fields are available, and we also have our online help guide too. So have a look at the online help guide, but also in the email templates. We go and create a new email template here. So when I choose my module in the e-learning, in the email template, should I say, I'll choose class delegate. I can then select the field, and I can see all the available fields for that particular module. So in the email templates, once you've chosen the module, you'll be able to see all the information here. So for a class delegate, I can see things like the venue. Whereas for an e-learning delegate, things like quick links, I can view the course. The information in here is much more related to an e-learning course. So package start date will be in here and things like that. So delegate direct e-learning URL. That won't be available in the other modules. It's specific to an e-learning course. Just had a message through there from Sharon just to make sure everyone can hear me okay. If anyone's got any problems with the sound, just let me know, because I'm not, obviously wouldn't be too sure. So if anyone's got any issues, do feel free just to pop me in a chat. Lovely. Okay, so just heading back to our workflows then. So once we've established the module to use, again, either checking the email templates or checking the online help guide, we can then choose the module here. Now, just a few more to talk through here. So we've got our course-related or our delegate-related workflows. We also have our invoice workflows. So when an invoice is created or an invoice is paid, some people don't want to send invoices out from the platform. Might do that through another finance package. Some people want to send them as receipts almost as well. So if somebody's paid by invoice, but the transaction method contains Stripe, Apeo, Barclays, whatever it might be, then the email is framed more as a receipt rather than an invoice. So again, a few different things you can do here, and this is all using the settings and the rules. Good question, Oliver. Is there an easy way to switch between workflow and email templates, like a shortcut, or do you always have to go to profile-admin? If anyone's been on any troubleshooting calls with our technical team, right-click, duplicate your tab, and quite often we'll just have them open side by side. So in one, we'll have our email templates, and in the other, we'll have our workflow. And that way you can just flip between the two. So if you're using Chrome, right click and duplicate, and we'll just have two open at the same time. That's our technique anyway. So we've also got our invoice workflow. We also have opportunities as well. So if anybody has an inquiry form on the website, a very common workflow people use for inquiry forms, as soon as it's been submitted, an automated email goes straight out to the inquirer to say, thank you for the inquiry, we'll get back to you in X amount of hours. So using that opportunity workflow together with the inquiry form can provide a really powerful tool there in the platform. So people getting that automation, even out of hours over the weekend, they're still receiving those comms. If anyone's submitted anything online, or you've submitted, you've purchased something, you want that confirmation straight back to make sure it's definitely got to the right place. Now, the final two I want to talk around here are products and services. So again, if anyone uses products and services within the platform, its ability to sell additional products and or services that aren't related to courses. What you probably find is the products and services very similar to the course structure. So the products and services, the overall module. And then if somebody makes a purchase or somebody actually puts through a transaction to buy the product, you would need to use the purchase module. So products and service, very handy to keep up to date with things like stock levels if you're managing that in the platform. Purchase is used for confirmation emails to confirm the purchase. So just a slight thing there we've seen before, products and service and purchase, very similar, quite often used hand in hand, but purchase is the one that you'd use to send out to the booker. Okay. So there's two options we're going to go through today. We're going to have a look at creating a delegate-based workflow and talk through some nuances with the rules. And we'll also look about creating a course-based workflow to trigger internally to staff and to create tasks. But before I go here, I'll take a quick break and just see if anyone has any questions so far. A question there from Claire, can I delete workflows? It's not possible at the moment to delete workflows. So if you do want to do that, I'd just drop our support team a message. We don't advise deleting workflows if they've already been used in the past because it's got that audit trail, but I'll just pop a ticket into our support team. Some people just put them delete at the start as well and filter them out that way. But if you've got the filter on for the active, again, you should not see those as standard. But yeah, pop a ticket through for that. We don't have the ability to delete them just because, let's say you've got a confirmation sent out thousands of times. If somebody deletes that, for example, it can cause you a whole heap of trouble. So yeah, we try and avoid that, but just pop a ticket through to our support team with the workflow ID if you need anything deleting. So good question there from Oliver. Can you use the invoice module to send an email to a person internally without our company to let them know an invoice has been completed? Yes, absolutely. So when we get to the actions later on, we'll take a look at how we send out workflows either to what we're going to call objects, so the delegates, the bookers, the managers, or to a set email address. There's a way of doing that in the platform. So we'll come on to that one later on, but great question. Okay, so in this first instance, we're going to create a class delegate workflow. So just hit save here. And the next two options for creating workflows are using the settings, and then the actions will tie it all together by saying what we want to send, when to send it, and so on. But the first part here is creating the rules. Now, the main section you're going to be using here is this middle part for the rules section. Now, these work very, very similarly to the filters in the platform. If people are quite au fait with filters on data grids, the rules are very similar. So you add rules in here for when this workflow would send. This is also a great way of seeing the fields that are available, but the downside to that is you have to save the workflow first, which is why email templates can be a bit easier just to check you're using the right fields. Now, when you're creating rules, particularly if you're using the platform or you're in a live environment with the platform, it's always worth thinking, what's the trigger point for this workflow to send? So what I mean by this, if we want to send this workflow at the basic level for anyone who's booked the course, so status is in booked, that's absolutely fine. And that would send to anyone with a booked status. But this doesn't tell us on what basis should this send. So right now in your platform, you've probably got lots and lots of delegates in the status of booked. So as soon as something happens that makes this workflow look at that delegate, so perhaps the course is updated or something's changed on that delegate record, even their email address or something else like their phone number, this workflow is going to activate and it's going to look at that delegate record and it's going to send because their status is in booked. So what we're looking for here is what's the trigger? What changes in the platform to then make this workflow send? So in this instance, a delegate booking on a course, their status has changed. So that rule, that filter, that's not available in the filter section of the data grid. That's specific for workflows. So the platform now is looking for a status change. If the status change and it moves to booked, now this workflow is going to activate. And this module we're using is the class delegate module. Okay. So when the delegate status changes, that status in booked, that's going to trigger the workflow. Now, that's the most basic example here for a class delegate. And that's going to apply to any delegates, regardless of course, regardless of industry or category, they're all going to receive that workflow. Now, a few other things I want to touch on here that we've seen across our customer base is quite often people want to create a workflow just for a specific set of courses. So for this particular course, we want to send this confirmation out because they're going to receive these attachments, which is absolutely fine. So quite often people will use the course template ID and they will select a number of courses for which this workflow would apply for. Now that's absolutely fine. And we're seeing this a lot more as people want to make the workflows a bit more tailored, a bit more configurable. and people use absolutely fine. Just as a best practice tip here, have a think about using categories or industries against course templates. The reason why I say that, if you make your workflows quite specific to course templates, so these specific 4 templates we want to send this workflow for, whenever you run a new course template or you start to create a new course, you're going to have to remember to go into the workflows and keep them updated. Whereas actually, if you look at using things like categories or industries or delivery methods for that purpose instead, when you create the course template, so long as you've chosen the correct category, it's going to be grouped into the correct workflow. So the workflow management, when you start to add more and more workflows into the platform, can become really important. And that means that the administration of the platform is done in the course template section when you're creating it, rather than having to go to multiple areas, and therefore you introduce more chance of errors. So have a think about how you categorize and group courses, and then how does that fall through to workflows. Another tip as well for anyone who's using sessional courses is this workflow right now would send, if we're thinking about a sessional course with a parent course and say 2 or 3 child courses, this workflow would send to each one because they all have the delegate booked. Whereas if you only want it to send for the head course, which is quite common, is session candidate equal to no? Which means this delegate is not on a session of a course. So they're either on a head course or a standalone. Very common for people who want to use sessional courses. That's a very common filter to have in the workflows. And again, you can tweak and amend these as much as you want. So the status is in booked. It might be that for a certificate, the status is in completed. Another common example, if anyone's using surveys in the platform, is that the survey email would send out for anyone who's attended the course. And the course survey submitted is equal to no. So this workflow here basically says as soon as somebody's attended the course, that status has been updated, send them the survey. That's the action we will take on the back of it. What you can do then is you can add multiple actions, which we'll look at in a second. So let's say after the course, you want to send them that initial survey. And then a week later, if they haven't submitted that survey, send it again. And another week later, send it again. This rule here would basically say, as soon as they've submitted it, it no longer meets the rules of the workflow, so stop sending. So it's a really nice way of having those chaser emails in there, but then stopping the workflow once the action's been taken. So another option to think about there. Okay, so there's another 2 points I want to mention on here. So custom fields. So if you're creating custom fields in the platform, any custom fields against course templates, you can pull through to the delegate module. So when you create that custom field, you'll have an option if you're creating one against the course templates or the user as well, that you can then use it in the rules or you can use it in the emails. The advanced rules at the top. So if anyone is feeling brave and would like to do some coding, you can open up the advanced rules. Now, the advanced rules will allow you to do and or statements in the workflow as well. So if I just click on advanced rules again, you can see status and has changed. What you can do here is you can start to build those up and you can start to put in some or functions. We don't see them used that often. Every now and again, it can come up that it's required, but that's another option for you there. And then finally, the trigger options here, the enable full logs until. So if you're setting up a workflow for the first time and you're doing some testing, The enable full logs will keep more detailed error logs. So workflows will error very regularly for the right reasons. If a delegate doesn't meet the right rules, it won't send, and that would technically be an error, which is fine. So the error logs just keep more detail for a period that you set. So whilst you're testing, you can see exactly why a delegate rule or a delegate workflow hasn't sent. It just keeps it a bit more, gives you a bit more detail. We don't have them on the standard because it can take up a lot of processing power on our side, but whilst you're doing some testing, I'd recommend putting those on. Yeah, so Oliver, yeah, AP can recognize when people reply to surveys and prevent emails being sent, chaser emails being sent. Yeah, absolutely. So this course survey submitted is empty would stop them being sent because that's a field against the delegate that gives you a timestamp of when that survey was submitted. If that's empty, they've not submitted it, keep chasing them until they actually submit the survey through the platform. And again, just a tip, we've seen other customers do it. So just on pass the information on. Some customers do it where they have it as attended to send out the survey. And then once they complete the survey, they then update that to completed and say, there's your certificate. So some training providers we've seen actually hold the certificate until the survey's been completed. Gets those survey rates up for you. Okay. So we're going to take a look now at the actions for workflows. So this is a delegate workflow. And now we'll take a look at the actions for this. So we've created this rule. It's going to send when somebody's attended. And now we want to create the actions. So the reason why we have actions in a completely separate section with its own data grid is because you can have multiple actions against one workflow. So somebody being marked as attended or somebody being booked on the course, that can then stem different actions. So going back to the question we had earlier about an invoice workflow being sent internally, it might be that an invoice being completed sends a receipt to the customer and it sends something to finance to say, FYI, this has happened in the platform. So in the action, what we'll do is we'll add it in here. So we'll just put send email here. If you have multiple actions against a workflow, the naming convention then is really important because otherwise it'll just all say send email. So when you choose an email action, the first part of the parameters is the action date. So the most common one is function. So what this does, it looks at the record and based on the different date and timestamps, you can send the email. So for confirmations, very much 5 minutes after current date time. That's the most common one. So 5 minutes after it's happened, send an email. We always advocate for a 5-minute window, just in case you accidentally set somebody to attended. You can change them back again. You don't. It's not going to send straight away because it'll create the workflow, and then when it's due to send, it will check the rules and realize it shouldn't send because it's been changed back. So 5 minutes gives you enough time there in case you've made a slight mistake. Send on action date only. So this is really important. If you're sending reminders, say 7 days before the course, just change this around here. So 7 days before the course starts, you want to send an email. And then 3 days before the course starts, another reminder email. Very common. If somebody books 1 day before the course, they might then get inundated with all these emails because they're all backdated and the workflow realizes it should have sent these 7 days ago. If you tick this box, it means that if this date has passed, it won't send the email anymore. So if somebody books the day before, they're not going to receive the 3 reminders that everybody else received. So again, quite handy not to spam your customers if they book on at the last minute. Next, we have the to address. So who do we want to send this email to? So because it's a delegate, we can send it to the booker, the company who's booked on the course, the delegate, the direct manager, the email, or the manager. So quite often it's the delegate you would send this to. And then the related email template. So we'll have a list here of any email template that falls in the right module. So user course date class. We can see these templates here. Alternatively, we can create a custom email and we can build essentially the email template in here. It does do the same thing. What we do find is people are much more likely to amend email templates and workflow templates. So having your email communications all in one place can be handy rather than having to go into each individual workflow, go to the end, find the action and edit it. It's a lot easier to edit it from the email template. It is possible to include attachments in here. So sending PDF documents, either document templates, so these would be things like your certificates or your course sign-in sheets, or you can just attach documents that you've stored in the file store. So any course reading, course materials you can put in as attachments. What we do find, and so this is becoming more common, is people including the file links in things like joining instructions. So the joining instructions against the course templates, people have started to store file links in there. And that means you can reduce your comms down. You just have 2 or 3 standard comms that are going out. And when you update those files, you're doing it in the SharePoint site where it's hosted or OneDrive, and people are accessing it direct from there. But accessplanit is being used as the vehicle to deliver that. Completely up to you. And also some people have found that when you're sending the attachments, some of their clients, if they've got quite high security email settings, for example, it might be blocking attachments. So again, up to you. You've got different options for sending out attachments, either as links or as genuine attachments on the workflow. Good question again. When you create a workflow email, will it be saved in the email template section? No, it won't. It'll just be saved in the workflow action. So you need to then go in here to edit it, or you just save it in here. My recommendation is to create the email template. That's what I always recommend. Now, just to touch on the final part here on actions in terms of sending this to a static email address. So if something happens and you want to email the training team, or you want to email the finance team or the sales team, what we can do is change this to address from field to constant. Now, importantly, because we've already chosen the delegate email address, that will carry over. And you can see we've got the candidate email address. But now I can type in another email address. So not only will this send to the delegate, but it will also send to my email address. Now, important here, make sure you hit enter and it saves the email. So this is how you can send workflows to a specific email address rather than what we call the object or the field. So again, changing that to constant, that works in every module. You can send it to something that's relevant to that module, or you can choose a specific email address to send it to, and that works for every module. So again, another use case for opportunities: an inquiry is created, an inquiry is submitted, it emails the person who's put the inquiry through. It also emails the sales team to let them know that that's been sent through. Okay. Any questions on this piece so far? What we're going to do next, by the way, is go through another workflow based on a course, and we'll look at some different actions. So we'll look at a task list that's being created. But any questions on this so far? Okay. So what we'll do is I'll just go back into my workflow template. So there's one I created earlier. So we'll just talk through step by step what's happened here. So we've got this course confirmed task list. So we've seen this come up more and more as a use case. Now I've got a few customers over the last few weeks who've done this. That when a course is created, it's marked as provisional, or it's not confirmed as yet. It's been put through the scheduling tool. But once it's been confirmed, a set of tasks is then created in the background. So rather than an email, a course being created and confirmed then kicks off the automation to create tasks. So in here, in the settings, this is based on the course date. So our trigger object here is the course status has changed, and that is now available. So it's gone from provisional, but now it's available. There might be some other rules in here that you have, that the course is in the future, it's in-house, or it's public, or it's a specific course template because you want to make the task list different for each course. Completely up to you. But then on the back end of this, we have different tasks that are going to be created. So firstly, we're going to confirm the trainer, confirm the venue arrangements, and then arrange the paperwork. So this has been created using a task action rather than an email. So when you add workflow action, rather than creating a note or sending an email, we're going to create a task instead. So for this one, it might be finalize numbers, the final task in this. And now we can create a task in the platform. So we're going to want to change this to function. So we want to create the task pretty much straight away. So as soon as that course is marked as available, this task is created. It's been created by myself, just so I know who's done it. It's then going to map to the trigger object. So because that course is created, that task will be mapped to that particular course. When this task is created, we can choose our priority. So if you want to start to categorize your priority of tasks, it's not made any progress yet because when it's created, it won't have started. The subject is finalized numbers, so we know what the task is about. And again, you can choose different task types to further categorize. And then when it's created, I'm going to add a due date that is due 1 day before the course starts. And these ones at the bottom here, assigned to users. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding in some optional fields. You don't have to use when you create tasks, but I'd like to. So in this case, I'll assign this to my colleague Louise. I can hit save. Good question there from Oliver. If the course status changes and then goes back again, so I'm assuming here that it's available, then maybe cancelled, then back to available again, will the duplicated task be sent out again? They would actually be sent out, they wouldn't by standard, but what you could do is, if you wanted them to be created again, is in the trigger objects, you can duplicate. So what the workflow does is it looks at an individual record, a delegate or a course. If it's already been created for that course, it won't do it again unless you want to duplicate, and then it will do it again. So again, if you put a course as available, it'll create the tasks, cancel it, nothing will happen. If you then mark it available again, by standard, nothing will happen. It will recreate all the tasks unless you change that to duplicate. So once we've got this workflow created, I'll just show you what this looks like in the back end. So we've got 4 tasks in here. So I already put this through earlier and tested this, so we won't have the final one. But if I just go to my courses and my class section, we see this top course here on the 1st of June. If I just right click this course and go to our task list, I can see that all these tasks were created in line with the course. So 60 days before, we need to confirm the trainer. A week before, we need to confirm the venue arrangements. And then a day before, we need to arrange the paperwork. So all these tasks are created based on a status. Now, if you move this course to completed, perhaps that might then trigger off another set of tasks. So the alternative to creating tasks is to have them created as standard by course templates, but with workflows, you can make them much more dynamic and much more specific to actions in the platform. So you can really kick on that automation and really streamline those kind of boring processes and make them into a task list that's very, very specific for courses. At the moment, so yeah, can you choose who the administrator is of the course to assign to that task? You can't at the moment, but what you would probably do in that instance, and we'll actually come on to this, so this is a good example for cloning workflows, is in the workflow section, that task list that we created earlier, what I would do in that instance, if I want to make it specific to the administrator, is I would have a rule that this workflow is just for my courses. And then in the actions, where we saw that that task was created against my colleague Louise, I would make sure all of these tasks are assigned to me. So this task is going to be assigned to me because these are my courses, these are my tasks to complete. So now I've made a task list just for me as my administrator. And then in the workflow section, I need to replicate that now across other people. I'd right click, I'll choose this drop down, and I clone the workflow. And then I just change the rules, change the settings, and that would be for my colleague. So if you've got workflows that are very similar and you've just got slight tweaks in the rules or the emails, using that clone workflows is really handy, just to duplicate it without having to go through and recreate every rule, every setting. Okay. So we're just coming up now to quarter 2, which is the scheduled end time for today's Workflows webinar. Oh, they went wrong there as well. So before we close this out, does anyone have any questions on workflows or anything they would like to go through before we close out today's session? So whilst we're waiting for people just to pop through any questions we can do. So just as a reminder, we have some really useful links on our help guide. So at the very top of your platform, you've got the help section. Do feel free to go in there. We've got some really helpful guides there for workflows and email templates. Someone was asked about areas of the platform. So we've got lots of great content in there. I'm assuming everyone received a newsletter recently this week, something we've started out with accessplanit recently. Combined with that, we've also got an events calendar as well. So the events we've got running over the next couple of months, we've got some more workshops coming up. So we've got one on dashboards on the 17th of March at 11 AM. And we've also got one on productivity in April, again, Thursday at 11 AM. The productivity one, we're going to be looking at different notes, tasks, an overall view of how can you make the platform really aid the productivity within the organization. New to accessplanit this year as well, we've also got some training events as well. So these are paid for sessions, and these are workflows, dashboards, and new administrator fundamentals. Now, these are 2-hour sessions with our trainer, Sarah, and these are paid for sessions, and all the details are on that website there. So accessplanit.com/upcoming-customer-events. So these are paid for training sessions, 2 hours, but we also have our workshops running as well. So if you'd like to book onto those, do feel free. They will book up. Everything we do at the moment is booking up quite quickly. So do go to that page there and do register your interest on those. And I hate for anyone to be disappointed. And we also have masterclasses running as well. But all the information you can find on that webpage there. So if anyone has any questions, do feel free to let me know. I'll keep the chat open for another minute or two. Other than that, I just want to say thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions at all, do feel free to give our support team a shout or just let us know. So thank you very much. See you soon.